Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
My name is Luke Thomas, and I'm a grateful alcoholic. I want to thank all you people for being here tonight. It's quite a welcome. I really appreciate it. I so enjoyed listening to Sierra talk tonight because I see her at the 6:45 meeting in the morning, and when I first saw her the first time, I said, "My God, this is fantastic. She's making 6:45. Isn't that beautiful?" And then when I heard tonight about where she was coming from, I identified with her. Especially when she talked about working so hard for something and then getting it and you're wondering how come it was given to you, you know. And not understanding that, because I had the same problem all my life, and especially on this program. But I'm getting better at it too, because I found out that the hardest part of this whole program is doing what you're supposed to do. That's, you know, after you get through the don't drink, and after you get over that, and then you start working on the steps, and then you start doing what your sponsor tells you to, and then you go to meetings, and then you kind of master the mechanics of the program of working on the steps, you know, and studying the steps and meditating about the steps and talking about the steps and what do they mean by this and what do they mean by that, and all those conversations that you have to have that goes a part of the fellowship. And then all of a sudden you can't understand, well, what do I do now to get what they keep calling this state of euphoria of happy, joyous, and free? What in the hell is happy, joyous, and free? God, you know, that's really a bummer when they start going that at you. You can figure about, well, happiness is something physical, maybe. I know how to be happy physically, is, you know, feel alive, feeling like you're enjoying yourself. Physically, you feel good. Joyous. What's joyous? That's getting joy. Well, how do you get joy? You know, outside of physical joy or mental joy, how do you get physical joy? How do you get joy? Joyous and free. What's free? I've never been free in my life. There's always been something always hanging over. You know, something's there saying, you have to do this because you're not free. I got lines on you. And there are people like have lines on you, like your job has a line on you. And your landlord has a line on you, and the economic factors that are going on around are lines on you, and the bank has got a line on you, and your credit and all those other damn things out there in the world are all lines on you. So how in the hell can you be free? I mean, free to me means that you have nothing, no lines on you at all, and that's impossible. So how do you become happy, joyous, and free? I remember when I first got sober, there was a girl or a lady, or, well, she was a nice person. And her name was Lillian, and she's not here anymore, but she had a mass of red hair, and she'd stand up and say, "I'm Lillian, I'm happy, joyous, and free." And everybody would holler. And she was. She just carried her exuberance and her laughter and her feeling of being happy, joyous, and free, and it was marvelous to be around her because she was so positive and up all the time. But I kept saying, oh, what a sales job that is. Oh, gee, what a pitch that is. And everybody running around saying, I'm happy. And when I was first sober, I couldn't stand people who were running around saying things like, I'm happy, joyous, and free. God, I said, you don't understand how tough it is out there. You don't understand how hard it is to get a job out there. You don't know how hard it is to cope with those people out there. You don't realize how bad those tigers are out there ready to eat you alive. What do you mean, this happy, joyous, and free? And I finally found out after a long, hard work. Now, let me give you a secret on how you become happy, joyous, and free. And the whole story is, it's an inside job. You see, I always related everything to the outside. I thought happy, joyous, and free was on the outside, like smiling and saying, hey, I feel marvelous, you know. And I found out that there was a guy on the program by the name of Cecil, and he always had a beautiful smile on his face. And I loved Cecil because every time I'd see him at the stag, I'd say, hey, Cecil, how's everything going? And he'd say, beautiful. And I think, what a horrible word for a man to use. I can't stand men that use words like beautiful. Oh, God, that's terrible. What do you mean, beautiful, Cecil? And he said, in my heart, I feel beautiful. Everything else in my life is in chaos. But it doesn't bother me because I know in my heart it's beautiful, and I know everything's going to be all right. And I was just, I used to look at him every Wednesday night and say, I can't believe this guy. What does he have? How did he get this thing that he's got? And whatever it is, I want some of it. Because I know that he's happy, joyous, and free inside. That's why he feels so good. And so, for all those you people who want to be happy, joyous, and free, it's an inside job, and boy, is that hard to do it. It's hard work. And it's trudging in the trudging zone. And it's not get caught speeding in the trudging zone. And it's repetition, and it's rote, and it's doing things over and over and over and over. And you get so damn sick of doing things over and over again that you can't stand it. And then you got to do it once more, over and over and over again. But you see, there's a lot of tricks. I call them tricks. Some people call them secrets. But I like to call them tricks because that kind of appeals to my mentality. You see, I'm the kind of a person that I like sneaky things. Now, maybe you are nice, wonderful, all-American people and you don't like sneaky things, but I do. I love sneaky things. And when I came here to the program and they asked me if I could stay sober for the rest of my life, I said no. And they said, could you say that you won't take a drink for the rest of your life? And I said no. And they said, well, why not? Why can't you do that? And I said, well, why should I make any promises now? I've broken every promise that's ever made, so why should I make any promises now? Who wants to make promises when I know damn well I'm going to break them? Because every promise I've ever made, I've broken every one of them. And I don't even like some of the ones that I've made that I thought weren't too bad. But I broke them. And so then they said the magic words. They said, can you stay sober today? And I said, yeah, I can do that. They said, well, that's all you have to do. I said, what do you mean by that? And they said, well, if you can stay sober today, then you've made it. And when tomorrow becomes today, and you stay sober, when tomorrow becomes today, then you stayed sober today. And when the day after tomorrow becomes today, then you stayed today, you stayed sober again. And that's the secret. And I said, man, that's the sneakiest approach I've ever heard of. God, that's sneaky as hell. All I got to do is today. And he said, that's all you got to do. So when people ask me now, look, how in the hell does it feel to be sober for 24 years? I said, I don't know. Well, what do you mean you don't know? You got 20? Yeah, I know that, but what do you mean you don't know? I said, I don't know what it is. I said, if you ask me what, I don't know what it is to be sober for 24 years. Well, why don't you know? Because all I've done was stay sober today. That's all I know. And the todays have just kept adding up. If I had to say I'm going to be sober next week, I say, geez, I don't know whether I can make it or not. He said, are you going to be sober next month? I said, I don't know. Are you going to be sober tomorrow? I don't know. But I do know that when tomorrow becomes today and I get up in the morning and I roll out on my knees and do my prayer and meditation, I know that I'm probably going to say, well, Lord, here I am again, checking in and turning my will and my life over to you, and I know we're going to have a good day today. Because whatever you want for me, that's what I want for me too. And then I go through my prayer and meditation thing where I do all my little rote of saying what I want to say. And that's the only way I've done it, is just today. But you see, the hard part about the whole program of Alcoholics Anonymous to me is, how do you do an inside job? Oh boy, I tell you, I sweated over that so many hours, because one of the things I was fascinated with is, and the power to carry it out. I want to turn my will and my life over to the care of God, and the power to carry it out. How do I find the power? And I meditated on power. God, what's power? I thought of all the power that people had over me. My mother had power over me. My teachers had power over me. My father had power over me. My bosses in the job all had power over me. There's everybody in my life had power over me. The motor vehicle department had power over me. I had 7502, so I can tell you all about the motor vehicle. That was power. I got laws that I have to live according to, because that's power. And I used to say, I was brought up in that school that laws are made to be broken. And I was brought up in that school, and I always had to feel about, I always also practiced the fact that if laws are made to be broken, that's fine, but don't ever get caught. And I practiced that too. And you see, when you come here to the program and they say the road starts getting narrower and narrower all the time, is what they mean is that you have to stop breaking some of the laws and playing around with the truth and getting a little more honest each day than you were the day before. And you're never going to get perfectly honest, and you're never going to do any of the steps perfectly, because it's impossible. The only step you can do perfect is the number one step. Don't drink. That's the only one you can do. Because all the rest of the steps are just going to be as you interpret them at the time. That's all they're going to be. Each step, and every one's going to vary too, according to how you feel that day on how you're working that step. But anyway, to get back to sharing a little bit about what I did and what it was like and what happened. I grew up with a father who was an alcoholic, and I didn't know it. I didn't know it until I came on the program. And he was a periodic daily. And he had his daily 2 martinis before dinner and his 4 or 5 scotches after, and I don't know how many during the day. And then every once in about 3 or 4 weeks or a month, he'd go on a real banger, and he'd wind up in some hotel for about a week trying to sober up. And then I was always the one that was chosen to go down and haul him out of the hotel and bring him home. And I thought, well, Dad is involved in business, and those are business pressures, and after all, that's part of being mature and married and having children and all those problems. And he used to talk about all the problems of bringing up kids and making a living and paying the bills. And when you got all the problems that he's got, no wonder he went out and drank, because there are a lot of problems out there. And I just accepted that was part of it. And he tried to tell me about the knowledge was, information was knowledge. And so he tried to tell me all about drinking and booze and all the rest of the stuff. So he primed me on information, which I paid no attention to. And then when I took my first glass of beer, that was the elixir that I said, this is the solving of all my problems. Because up to that point, I had a hard time with communication. I had a hard time getting out of the parameters and the disciplines and everything that I was brought up with. I couldn't even go out and dance on the floor, because I knew how to dance, but I couldn't get out there and dance because I just was frozen when it came to doing something I didn't even know how to do, because that was doing something in front of other people. But I'd give me a glass of beer, and oh boy, I get out on that floor and I could really dance. And then that graduated into drinking martinis, and then into bourbon and scotch and rum and you name it, and I drank it, and I thought it was the greatest thing that ever happened down the pike. And I became a daily periodic, like father, like son. And it wasn't too bad because I had a good constitution at the time, and I seemed to be able to not do too much of it, and I could get up the next day and go to work. I was a workaholic, and I could always get up the next day and show up for work, but I could last just so I could make sure I was showed up, and then after I would disappear after an hour and got outside, I got to go outside and do something. And I had such a job that I could move around an awful lot. And when I came home from the service is when I really started drinking hard, because I was involved in selling real estate in Beverly Hills. And if you like pressure and you like to work in a pressure cooker, why, all I can do is recommend to you is go to work in Beverly Hills and sell real estate, because there's about one of the greatest pressure cooker there is, and it's fantastic. And I loved it. In the beginning, I just thought it was the greatest thing in the world, because I was making money. And I loved making money, and selling real estate was just a power. That was power. I loved the power. And it was every night at my place of doing business was on La Cienega Boulevard, Restaurant Row, and every night was cocktail night at the Tail of the Cock, or some one of those sewers up and down La Cienega. And I knew them all. One of my favorite stunts was to park the car at Ollie Hammond's at Wilshire, and there used to be an Ollie Hammond's restaurant there in Wilshire, La Cienega. I'd park my car there, and then I would hit every place up and down both sides of the street, all the way up to the Tail of the Cock. And that would be about 10 or 15 places, and I think, boy, I'm having the gas. This is a marvelous time to do, and I'm having more fun than a picnic. And then I started getting my 502s, and I kept saying, well, I'm not going to have any more of those, and I'd go to Santa Barbara, and I'd wind up in Santa Barbara to get out of town. And I wind up in Santa Barbara with 3 502s in Santa Barbara, and that's not easy to do, but it can be done very easy. And then I had to do 9 weeks on commuting up there to Santa Barbara on a 502. That was the first time I got thrown into jail, and I'll never forget having I couldn't believe, you want to be able to go through an experience that's unbelievable, is just getting thrown into jail for having one too many drinks. And they treat you like a criminal, like you had just gone out there and murdered somebody, and you're a bum, and just, the way those cops treat you, it's so bad. And you say, well, I'm really not that bad. I just had a couple of drinks too much, and I'm really not that. I didn't kill anybody. I didn't do anything. And then I had to do 9 weeks up there, and boy, I came out of there. I said, I'm never going to do that again. And you know what happens when you say, I'm never going to do that again. And pretty soon I even left town, because I was out on bail for 2 502s, and I thought, well, they were going to throw me in jail for 3 years and fine me and all the rest of this stuff. And I said, no way, Jose. And I packed my car and my bag, and I got in my car, and I went to wound up in Aspen, Colorado, and I hadn't been there 2 months in Aspen, and I got a 502. That's impossible in Aspen. They don't care what you do in Aspen. You can commit murder in Aspen, they won't pay attention to you. And you'll get off easy, like she did, and that's not unusual. And that's true, because one of the guys I looked up was the guy was the retired sheriff up there in Aspen County, and he was one of my buddies. I used to take him beer out there, and he used to tell me all the stories about the unsolved murders in Aspen County that he was involved in. They never caught the culprit. They always knew who it was, who committed the murder, but they never caught him. And the person was still around, but they just never caught him. That's the way Aspen County worked. And so I was down there 30 days, and I got one, and then about 2 months later, I got another one. They told me to stay out of the car because they didn't want me driving anymore, and they caught me driving, so I got another one. Boy, what's going on here? Well, the reason why I know some of these things today was, you see, I've got news for you that whatever you think you're getting away with, your higher power is looking at you and putting you under a microscope and saying, what can I do to this person, that little one down there, that's going to make him understand that I got news for you, that if you don't straighten up and start flying right, you're going to have to keep going through pain and more pain and more pain. And you keep saying, what's wrong? Why do I have to go through this? What's happening? I mean, I'm trying to be a nice person. I'm trying to be a good kid. I'm trying to, and more and more and more and more until finally you say, I can't stand it any longer. I surrender. And that's all he wants to hear. When you learn how to say that, you got half the battle won. Because you see, that's the first step is I surrender. I can't stand it any longer. So, okay, now that you understand what surrender is and who's the boss, now are you going to do what you're told? Now, you see, I don't have any trouble turning my life over to the care of God. That's no problem with me. I can turn my life over to God because I said, sure, I didn't manage it very well. I can't say I did a good job. But when you're talking about will, that's not the same thing. What do you mean, turn my will over? Don't you understand that part of my charisma is my will? See, my will is beautiful. God, I can't stand giving that up because I wouldn't accomplish anything in this life if I didn't have some will to get out there and do things that I want to do, what I want to do. Not what nobody wants me to do, what I want to do. And the point being is, he says, I know, but it isn't your will any longer, it's mine. And then you're fussing around with my will for you, and you aren't doing what I want you to do. So you see, the other half of the surrender part is the hardest part of all. So I didn't know this, but I kept getting these 502s. And I kept forgetting these 502s. Now, I'm in Aspen, Colorado, where you're not supposed to get anything in Aspen. They don't care how much you drink or fall in the gutter or anything. And I can't believe that a town that's so free and open like this place is, that I'm getting the shaft that I'm winding up. I'm not only getting fined, but I'm getting time. And you're supposed to get one or the other, but I'm getting both. And this is like they're really shoving it to me. And they even threw me into jail down in Glenwood Springs. And I said, what am I here for? And they said, nothing, just shut up and stick in there. And I said, what, you were supposed to be accused of stealing all this guy's booze and possessions out of the man up there in Aspen that I was staying at his house as a guest. And you're supposed to have stolen everything. And he came down there and he said, he never stole anything. He was a guest in my house. He came in, he cleaned up my house for me, he took care of me, he was like a nurse, he was a blah, blah, one of my best friends. What do you mean? What's he doing here? He says, well, we got a report that he had stolen a lot of things out of your house. He said he never stole anything. And so the sheriff turns around to me and he said, how do you like my wife's cooking? Now, how do you like that for a boomer? Now, I'm a pretty smart guy that when a sheriff says to me, how do I like your wife's cooking? You better believe that I know right away that he's my higher power, that sheriff is, and if I don't give him the right answer, he's going to say, well, you said the wrong thing, Buster. And I said, oh, I think your wife is a great cook. I love your cooking. That's fine. He said, you'll stay here another week. Didn't make any difference what I said. He was going to keep me another week, and then I forgot. You know, there's a lot of politics involved too. Because I didn't find out till later that the more people they keep in jail, the more they get money from the state. I didn't know that at the time. It's part of the system. All those drunks that they pick out and throw into jail down here in county, the state kicks in, pays. That's all it's part of the system. But I didn't know that at the time. So anyway, I'm going through all these things and I'm saying, how come me? What was happening? I don't believe these things that are happening to me. But I know today that my higher power was looking at me under that microscope and saying, what am I going to do with this little one? He knows how to survive anything I throw at him. No matter what it is, he's a survivor. He survived 4 years in the service, all through the Pacific. And I hit all of the islands and all the rest of that stuff, and I survived all that. I came out of that. And now, no matter what I throw at him, I can't seem to get the message over to him about who the boss is and what I want him to do. So he kept getting me these 502s. And finally, I'm there 2 years, and I get the message to leave and to come on home. And all of a sudden, I get this, wow, I got to leave here. And so the circumstances worked all out. He worked out all the circumstances for me to leave Aspen, come on home. I'm over here 30 days in Los Angeles, been gone 2 years to the date almost, and I get another 502. And this time the judge looks at me and he says, you know, this kid hasn't learned anything. 7 502s, and he hasn't learned anything at all. 90 days at Saugus. And by this time, I'm saying, I can't stand this any longer. I don't know what's happening to me, but I can't stand it. And I went up there to do 90 days in Saugus. It's now called, well, I don't even know whether it's there anymore. But I went up there for 90 days, and that was like really, I like to relate to it as a fact it's like taking a piece of steel and molding it to the shape that you want to do. And you beat the heck out of it, and then you stick it in the fire, and you beat it and pull it out of the fire, and you beat the hell out of it, and you stick it in water and put it back in the fire and bring it out there. Boy, for 90 days up there, and I'm saying, I'm getting madder and madder and madder, and I can't see straight, and I'm gritting my teeth and saying, I never want to come back here again as long as I live, because I can't stand being treated like a bum and a criminal, a fellow. And this is the way the cops are treating me, and I don't believe this. I've never been that kind of a person. Why do I have to be treated like this? I can't stand it. And the answer came back. I said, well, when you get ready to surrender and be willing to do what I want you to do, then maybe I'll show you there's a better way of life here for you. Now, I didn't hear those things, but all I knew was that I couldn't stand what was happening to me. And all I said, I'm never coming back here again as long as I live. I can't stand being in prison. I'm not coming back here. I don't care what I have to do. So, well, I got the answer for you, is you go to Alcoholics Anonymous. He didn't say that to me. He just said, you do what I tell you to. And my cousin called me up and took me to my first meeting. And I went in there, and he said, how'd you like it? When he came out of the meeting, he said, how'd you like it? And I said, well, I thought there was a bunch of drunks there. And he said, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, there was a guy telling a story about how he lost his job, and he lost his wife, and he lost his cars, and he lost his kids, and he lost everything. And the more he talked about losing things, the more everybody was laughing. And I said, those are drunks. Drunks only laugh at tales of woe. And he said, yeah, that's right. But they're sober drunks. I said, you mean everybody in that room is sober? I said, yeah, they were sober. I said, I can't believe it. He said, they were, Luke. I said, wow, that's fantastic. Then he said the magic words. Come with us, and we will show you a better way of life that anything in your wildest imagination you never would have believed could happen to you. And I thought, well, being this, as I told you, I'm a sneaky guy. I thought, well, you see, I can go along with a proposition as long as you're going to help me out to get me out of where I am. And if that's the proposition, I'll buy it, because I can always change my mind later on down the post if I don't like what's happening. And you see, I figured that if I came here and I couldn't learn everything there was to learn here, but you had to teach in 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, I'm a very fast learner. And if I can't learn everything you've got to teach me in that amount of time, something's wrong, because I'm a good student. I learn fast, and I learn exactly as you say, by the book. I got to laughing when I got here 90 days, and my sponsor said, this is a way of life, Luke. And when you get the message, you don't have any other way of life but this one. You don't have that life out there in business and then this life in here. It's one way, and this is it. It's my way of life. I'm saying, hey, come on, I don't know whether I want to buy all that. This didn't come easy. I fought it all the way down the line. If you're anything like me, I don't like being told what to do. I don't like being shown what to do. I don't like to go along with your ideas unless I think they're as good as mine. And I know damn well that nobody has any ideas that are as good as mine, so why should I accept your ideas? I just recently had a lens implant from a doctor down at surgeon, and I interviewed him for the first time to find out whether I was going to let him be my surgeon and do this lens implant. And he talked to me for a few minutes, and then he got to laughing. He said, "You're a very skeptical person, aren't you?" I said, "You better believe it." And he said, "Why are you so skeptical?" And I said, "Because for a lot of reasons, I found out over a lifetime of living that what you think is very good and recommend it very highly doesn't come up to my expectations of what I think is very good. So consequently, when you say this is going to be good, I get very skeptical on how good you think it's going to be, because I don't know whether it's going to live up to what I think is good." And he laughed and he said, "I promise you, it'll be just as good, or if not better, than what I'm telling you right now." And he was so confident, I thought, wow, I'm listening to somebody that knows what he's talking about. And he was right. I got both of them in now, and I tell you, it's the most exciting thing I ever happened. This is one of the benefits of the program. Now I got 20/30 in one eye and 20/25 in the other eye, and so I don't have to wear glasses at all. Isn't that marvelous? Isn't that great? I got long distance vision in one eye, and I got short distance vision in the other eye. Between the two of them, I can do everything. But I got to laughing about how skeptical it was that every time I'd go in for an examination, he'd say, "Boy, are you still feeling as skeptical as you did in the beginning?" I said, "No, it changed my mind." Because you see, again, I heard the word. And that's what you get here is the word. It's not easy. I think the hardest part is to take orders. I think the hardest part is to do what you're told. But you see, let me tell you something that turned me on. Not only the promises in the book turned me on, the things that I heard from my sponsor turned me on. Like he said to me, "Let me tell you something. If you sat down and wrote the script in your wildest imagination on what you would like to experience for the rest of your life, let me tell you, you'd be really putting yourself down on what's really going to happen to you." And I said, "Boy, you don't want to understand me. I got a powerful imagination. You really don't know who you're talking to when you say that." He said, "I'm telling you the truth. I promise you." I didn't believe it. How can you believe anybody that's going to promise you things like going to Miami in 1975 at the International Convention and seeing Bill Wilson on the stage on the last appearance that he made there? Was that in 1970. Thank you. 1970, it was there. I'm glad I got keeping around for that. Check me up. Thank you, Jerry. And I saw Bill Wilson on the stage there, and I never dreamed I would be in Miami and be there. And Jeannie was there, and it was a fabulous trip. It was a great trip, and we were in Denver. A bunch of us, there were about 25 or 30, I don't know, maybe more than that. Went to Denver in 75, and we went to New Orleans in 80, and we went to Montreal in 85. And if anybody had told me I would do those things, I would have said, "That's a crock. I never would go into those places." I was always talking about traveling and going places, but I never went. I was in a local bar drinking it up, talking about going somewhere, and I never went anywhere. Other things that have happened to me all the way down the line, and by practicing the principles of all your affairs. One of the hardest things was to be honest. I didn't know what honest. I know how to be cash register honest. I've been in the banking business, so you got to learn how to be cash register honest in the banking business. That's the only way you get along in that business, is to be cash register honest. I know how to do that. But how about being honest with me? How about following the rules that I have to follow? Do I like to follow the rules? No way do I like to follow the rules. Do I like to follow when they tell me to do certain things? No way. I like to fudge the rules. I was always believe fudge the rules, stretch them out a little bit. They can't do them exactly as they're supposed to. And so I played around with that. And that's one of the things that you find on this program when they say that it gets narrower. You have to stop doing those things as it goes on and on and on. You have to stop doing those things. I was just meditating the other day. For 2 years, I was talking about getting the word from a higher power. Sit down. I want you to sit on the bench. I want you to watch the grass grow. I want you to smell the daisies. And I want you to make friends. Because you're always in such a rush to go from here to there. You're about here to there. I was talking to a guy the other day. I said, boy, you remind me of a hummingbird. And he said, well, what do you mean by that? I said, you know how fast a hummingbird moves? I said, you ever watch a hummingbird all over, you know, all the flowers, blah, 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 blah. One of them sit, and that minute sit down. I said, that's what you remind me of. You're like a hummingbird. And he said, what's wrong with that? I said, nothing wrong with it. The only point of it is to think how much you miss in life because you're working around everything. You're missing an awful lot. And that's what I had to learn how to do because I was that way too. I was always wanting to go from here to there as fast as I could go. And I never saw anything between here and there because that's all I wanted to do was get from here to there. And that's all was my main objective. And I had to sit down and I had to stop watching the grass grow and smelling the daisies and enjoying life and making friends because I didn't have time to make friends. I was too much in a hurry to make friends. What's friends? You know, what can they do? Well, if you haven't found out, friends are some of the things that make you warm inside, some of the things that you enjoy being with, people that you enjoy. But if you don't learn how to spend the time with them, then you'll never know what friends are. And that's part of this whole program here. If you like, I thought the other day, I was telling Brendan tonight, I said, did you ever have the thought that maybe you're under a microscope? And did you ever work in the laboratory where you got the microscope out and, you know, and you looked at these little things under the microscope and you say, oh, yeah, yeah. I said, yeah, look at those little devils. They're all running around there and doing it. Oh, yeah, look at those little devils. Oh, well, look at that. That's not moving too much. That's moving very slowly. I said, yeah, well, that's going very fast. I said, yeah. Did you ever get the feeling that you're under a microscope and your higher power is sitting there looking through the microscope? And he's saying, look at this little one. This is moving so fast, I got to slow it down a little bit because it's moving so fast, it's going to burn itself out because the fast ones that move the fastest are always the ones that are... Now, I'm not talking about physical fast. I'm talking about mental fast, emotional fast, all those things too. So it isn't a question of the runner. It's also how fast are you running up here all the time in your head about how fast I'm going to run in my head, you know. And that's a good way to burn yourself out. So he's looking at you and saying, well, I think I'll stir the pot a little bit. And I'll move a little around, move you around. When I think you're ready. And that's part of this whole program. And the most beautiful part of this whole program is the number one beginning is, I surrender. That's all you got to say. When you go home tonight, just get down on your knees in the bed. I surrender, boss. I surrender, God. I surrender, Lord. That's the beginning. That's the honesty. And the second part is saying, all right, now I'm willing to try. Just to try and do the things I'm supposed to do. That I know you have all these goodies in store. Man, the goodies that are in store for you are just fabulous. If you're willing to do the things in order to enjoy them. They're all there, but you've got to do the inside job first, and then everything happens to you on the outside. That's the secret. Thank you.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious. Do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. If that shows up, the gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.